morning, everyone, and welcome to our pension auto-enrolment webinar. My name is Dave O'Brien. I'm the President of the Cork Business Association and Head of Tax for Xeinadin Ireland. Today we have Anne O'Doherty, who is Head of Life and Pensions of Xeinadin Financial Services, and she's going to go through all the relevant aspects of auto-enrolment. And we also have Sally Turner, who's the Payroll Manager in Xeinadin, who is going to discuss some payroll issues that employers might have. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to firstly hand over to Sally, who's going to just spend a couple of minutes going through those payroll points. And then once Sally is done, Anne will take you through the auto-enrolment. So over to you, Sally.
Good morning. Thank you, Dave. Just to outline really the importance of payroll and the practicality of this with auto-enrolment coming into force. It will now be run through your payroll system. So between now and the end of the tax year, the NERSA, the governing body, will have a look at your payroll submission summaries, and they will decide from those summaries from the last 13 weeks of who will be eligible or not for auto-enrolment. So the first payroll summary for your first payroll run in January 2026 will go ahead as normal. Once that's submitted to revenue, then NERSA come into effect and they will decide who is eligible and who's not, and it'll go practically through your payroll from then on in. It seems to be tied into your digital certificate, and revenue will be tying in with NERSA to see who will go in and who won't. The portal that they're recommending for people to employers to register is not up and running yet, so a lot of the details still is unknown. But that's basically the practicality. Payroll has gone so important with the tie-in, the links between your payroll software linking to revenue, which links to social welfare, and now we have NERSA, which is the governing body for auto-enrolment. So that's the importance of it, and it can't be understated how important this is going to be and how practical it has to be that your payroll and your payroll person running it, your administrator, is up to date with what's happening. Payroll software they're working in line with NERSA to get it to run smoothly, but as yet none of the updates have come out, so it still hasn't been ironed out fully as to what will happen, but we're hoping that all will run well. So that's my spiel. If you have any questions, please put them in the box and Anne will take over now. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. A busy few weeks and months for you, I'm sure. And as Sally said, look, if you have questions, there is a chat box there that you can put them into, and we can ask Anne and Sally at the end. So over to you now, Anne.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. So I have a small presentation this morning, which I hope will help everyone understand the ins and outs of auto-enrolment. I know we're all listening to it on radio, TV at the moment, so hopefully this will make it quite simple to understand, and if there's any questions, please don't hesitate to ask us. So what is auto-enrolment? The introduction of auto-enrolment is generally to be welcomed, and Ireland will be the last OECD country to implement the auto-enrolment. And when it starts, it'll go a long way to deal with one of the main pension problems in Ireland. For employers, many aspects of the proposed scheme need to be considered carefully, whether they already operate some form of pension scheme for the employees or there's no pension scheme maybe in place. While auto-enrolment will tackle the problem of pension coverage, the contributions in the early years will be very low, and obviously pensions, people not paying into pensions will still be a problem. Employers will be compelled to make a pension contribution for the vast majority of their employees. And how much do I have to contribute, or what's this auto-enrolment really looking like? So employees, employers and the government contributions automatically increase over time, and as the number of years of participation in the auto-enrolment scheme. And I suppose that's the plan. And really, I suppose for a lot of employers, it'll really depend, I suppose, how the economy is going to see, will we eventually get up to the higher rates? So as you can see there from the table, it's starting in starting the first 1 to 3 years, the employee will contribute 1.5%, the employer 1.5%, and the government 0.5%. And you can see as the years are going up along, if we look in the years 7 to 9, the idea at that stage is that the employee will contribute 4.5%. The employer will be contributing 4.5% of the salary, and the government will be contributing 1.5%. And I suppose by introducing it bit by bit, it gives the employee and the employer time to get used to making the contributions, because I suppose you really can see it is going to be a deduction out of your salary. Really, what do we really need to know about this auto-enrolment? So employers with existing pension schemes, and there's a lot of questions coming like that. I have a scheme, or I have 3 or 4 people, you know, where there's a scheme in place and they're being deducted from their salary at the moment. How will that work? So at the commencement of auto-enrolment, employees who are included in a pension scheme operated by their employer, or an ordinary occupational scheme or a PRSA, are exempt from inclusion in auto-enrolment. Many pension schemes offer membership to employees once they have met particular eligibility. So sometimes, you know, when somebody starts new employment, they could say, well, when you're so many months employment, or, you know, your age so many years with us, we'll then start contributing to your pension plan. But this now will have to be looked at. So to continue being able to include future hires in the employer scheme, employees will need to be included in the pension scheme from the date they join. If they don't, they would automatically be enrolled into this auto-enrolment. Many pension schemes...
I'm sorry, Anne, can I just jump in there? Can you just move
Yes.
the slides as you're going there, if you wouldn't mind?
Oh, perfect. Yeah. No,
Thanks a million.
It's not, sorry. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Sorry, is that better? Apologies about that.
Perfect, yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, sorry, I don't have an existing group scheme. Sorry, Dave, is that moving along with you?
How much do I have to contribute is on the screen there at the moment. I think, Anne, if you can't get the slides going, just keep on talking.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, perfect. Sorry about that. So I'll just fly through that again. Apologies about that. So how much do I need to contribute? So the slide there is really showing you, you know, as I said, when the start of the introduction of the auto-enrolment, the first 1 to 3 years really is to get people used to paying, you know, a contribution out of their salary, because it will be a deduction from the salary. And as the years are going on, years 7 to 9, you can see there's a greater contribution. And again, I suppose 4.5%, it is going to be something that everybody needs to get used to. So really, what do you need to know? So employers, and I just fly through this again because apologies you missed the slide, employees with existing pension schemes, at the commencement of the auto-enrolment, employees who are included in a pension scheme operated by the employer will not be included in the auto-enrolment. Many pension schemes offer membership to employees once they've met eligible criteria. In other words, you may need to be in the workplace for a year or that. But now what will happen is you'd be automatically put into the auto-enrolment if you don't include the new join into the scheme. Many pension schemes operate on a voluntary basis where the employee, once they meet the criteria conditions, are offered membership of the scheme. The employee can decide whether they want to join or not. And to meet the AE conditions, membership of the pension scheme will need to change and become compulsory. This in turn means that the membership will need to become a condition of the employment for new hires and employment contracts. So just in simple terms, many people that have joined employment, they may not join the pension scheme for 6 months or a year. That'll have to change now, and that'll be something that the employer will have to look at, because if you don't join the new hire, they will automatically go into the auto-enrolment. So existing employees, the next issue that needs to be addressed by employees who have in the past opted out not to join the scheme and who are waiting to meet the eligibility conditions, there are three possible ways of dealing with this. The simplest solution is to include them in this existing scheme and avoid any involvement with the AE scheme. The problem here is to convince employees who previously decided not to join the scheme. And we have seen this at the moment. Somebody may say, employer, we're not going to go with the auto-enrolment, we're going to set up a PRSA. And when we talk to the employees, really, if they're pushing back a little and saying, no, we don't want to join the scheme. And I suppose the idea of the auto-enrolment is to get people into the scheme and get used to paying a pension. Enroll employees who won't join the employer scheme into an auto-enrolment. This presents a number of difficulties for the employer, including the need to administer two different sets of pension deductions from salaries or wages, one set from the gross pay and one from the net pay. Another issue to consider is that the employer will have two separate cohorts of employees in terms of pension provisions and comparison within the scheme. So this may become a problem for employers if they have an existing scheme in place and then the employee doesn't want to join it and they have to go into auto-enrolment. You know, it may then involve discussion between employees, you know, what kind of charges are on your scheme, what happens when you retire on your scheme, and I suppose it's something you would like to prevent within the workplace. The third option to explore in conjunction with, should be really in conjunction with a financial broker, is the establishment of a separate category where the existing pension scheme for those employees who only want to pay the AE contributions. Although the employer would have two sets of benefits for the employees, at least they'd be dealing with one pension scheme and one administration scheme, which would be much easier for the employers. So this really will just kind of highlight if you don't have an existing group scheme in place at the moment. So how it will work is the government will top up the employee contribution by a third, which evaluates really to tax relief of 25%, because remember, in auto-enrolment, you will not be getting tax relief. And this is considerably less than the 40% relief that a higher rate taxpayer would benefit from if an employee-sponsored pension scheme, and it is not as attractive as the 20% taxpayer. And who is in charge? The National Automatic Retirement Enrolment Savings Authority will be responsible for the administration of the scheme, and they'll collect the employer and employee contributions, and they'll invest the contributions in line with the decisions taken by the employees, and they'll be in charge then also of paying out benefits at retirement. Then on death, how does it work for auto-enrolment? If an employee dies before age 66, then the value of their account after tax will be deducted, will be paid to their estate. This differs from a PRSA or a personal pension where the value of the account is paid to the employee's estate, or an occupational pension scheme where 4 times of the member's salary would be paid. The value of any personal contributions could be paid tax-free to the employee's spouse. And that is a huge difference really to be looked at. The retirement benefit. When an employee reaches age 66, 25% of their account will be paid out tax-free, with the balance being subject to tax. In the future, traditional retirement products such as annuities and ARFs, which are currently available from employer-sponsored schemes. The retirement benefit, I suppose, is something that has been highlighted a lot because it's completely different to how it would work for a PRSA. So the lower income limit, all employees aged between 23 and 60 earning 20,000 or more must be included in the auto-enrolment scheme, where an employee has 2 or more employments, and in some or all of them, the employee is earning less than 20,000. The AE authority will, based on revenue payroll data, advise each of the employers of the need to include the particular employee in the scheme. And how does it work? Where will my money be invested? 3 preferred investment managers were named. Initially, an employee will have their contributions invested in a default investment fund, and they can decide to remain in default investment or select a risk level that they're comfortable with. Based on this, their contribution will be invested across all 3 investment managers, and as a result will achieve an average return of all 3. I suppose going back again, just to highlight the difference, if you're setting up a pension, you know, through your payroll or personal pension, you really do have more authority to where you want to put your funds. Opt-out facility, and this is an area that's coming up a lot in a lot of questions. The auto-enrolment scheme will work on the principle that all eligible employees will be included, but they can at certain points opt out of the scheme. Employees who are included must remain in the scheme for the first 6 months, after which they can opt out in months 7 or 8 if they wish. Employees will also be able to opt out after each contribution rate increase. Employees will also be able to pause or suspend their contributions at any stage after the first 6 months of the scheme. And I think these are questions that employees will definitely be asking about the auto-enrolment. Eligible employees, I think we've looked at already, between the ages of 23 to 60, earning 20,000 or more, will be included in the scheme. Employees aged between 16, 22 or over 60 can opt to be included also if they wish. Other considerations to have a look at, and the tax relief, I know we've just kind of discussed it earlier. Under AE, the government would pay a top-up equal to 1/3 of the contributions being paid to the employee. This evaluates, as I said, a tax relief of 25%. Under the separate employer scheme, tax relief would be given to the individuals at the marginal rate of 40%. As one of the other areas is there is no additional voluntary contributions on the auto-enrolment scheme. You are set to the levels which we required, which I covered earlier, the employer at 1.5%, the employee at 1.5%, and the 0.5% from the government. So is there an alternative? If you have many of your staff asking you, you know, what else can I do? Should I be going into an auto-enrolment? So, and I suppose it's an area we're very busy with at the moment. Employers are starting to set up a salary deducted PRSA if they're not happy to introduce the auto-enrolment scheme for their employees. And a PRSA is a way of helping you provide a retirement savings plan, and it's a long-term investment product, as you know. It allows you to create a pension fund for yourself when you retire. And the thing about the PRSA is it qualifies at the marginal rate. So somebody that's on the higher tax rate, the salary deducted PRSA is definitely a better option for them, because anything they're contributing, they can claim 40% tax relief on it. And we have an example here for you to look at. So someone contributing to a workplace pension, as you can see, what's invested into the pension is $225 a month. You contribute 90 with tax relief. The tax relief the government would be giving you would make up at 60, and your employer would be contributing 75 a month. And that's based on the example there of the scheme of an annual income of 60,000 with a tax rate of 40%. And you can see on the other side, if you were to go for the auto-enrolment, My Future Fund, because you're not getting the extra tax relief, the 40%, there is a difference, especially for employees on the higher tax rate. So I suppose what is there to consider if you're saying, listen, oh, maybe I should introduce the PRSA scheme, you know, to my employees. If you're looking to do that, the minimum amount that can be invested every month is €100 a month. So if the employer says, listen, yes, I prefer to have the PRSA scheme, I contribute 1.5%. We have to make sure then there's a minimum premium of €100 a month going into the PRSA between the employee and employer contribution. The annual management charges are significantly lower in the My Future Fund, but there is a much narrower range of investment choice with My Future Fund, and the allocation rates with the PRSAs may be a little higher. So there's a few things to be considered, and I suppose realistically a lot of the time it's now breaking down to the tax relief. If I am on the higher tax relief, should I just stay with the PRSA? Should I just join the existing scheme that's in place? So one thing there's to highlight there, PRSA Class S self-employed will not be automatically enrolled, and the PRSA offers more flexibility because you can get your hands on your PRSA if you've left employment between the ages of 40 to 70, which will not apply to the auto-enrolment. So they're just a few considerations that definitely need to be considered. Should we have a group scheme for our employees? Should we just let them into auto-enrolment? And these, I suppose, are the areas that, you know, that we've having a lot of discussions with employers at the moment. So that's just a highlight of it, just to break down, you know, some of the areas that we feel important, some of the areas and questions that are coming up to us every day. So I suppose if there's any questions or any further discussions we want to have, please feel free there.
Thanks, Anne. Just a couple of questions. You said there that the Class S PRSI payers won't be auto-enrolled automatically, but can they qualify for auto-enrollment?
Yes, sorry, yeah.
And can they qualify for auto-enrollment, Dan?
Sorry, Dave, I'm going to take that.
Oh, sorry, Sally.
No, you're okay. The only classes for auto-enrolment are J or A or any of the public service ones, but most public service will have a defined benefit scheme from the public service anyway.
Okay, so if I'm a sole trader, company director, I won't have access to this? Okay. Okay.
On the other hand, Dave, where that, I suppose, is handy to know is there's many directors that are paying pensions at the moment, and there was a fear, you know, they're making annual contributions. I don't have a monthly one. I don't have it coming out of auto-enrolment. Will I be pulled into auto-enrolment as well? And I suppose it's just good to know that no, they won't be. So, you know, that's the other angle from it as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And you mentioned about new employees, so they will automatically enroll. Is that the case? And if so, how long does it take for them to auto-enroll? Do they have to wait 6 months before they come in, or how does it work?
I'll take that again, Dave. So the minute they go on, so a new employee goes on your payroll system, you submit your PSR to Revenue. Revenue take that details and share it with NERSA, which is the auto-enrolment fund company. And then when you run your next pay run, you will draw down the AEPN, which is the auto-enrolment payment notification, and that employee should be on that then, once they're eligible.
Okay. And you know, so a lot of people will come in and they'll work on a probationary period, and then they'll either stay on or not. So will that just complicate things if that person comes in under auto-enrolment and then leaves after 3 or 4 months later?
Yeah, they'll automatically be enrolled in the scheme, and if they leave, then the money is sitting in their fund. So if they move on to another employment, it's there for them.
Okay.
And I suppose, Dave, that's the importance. If there is a scheme in place, you know, within a company or within a business, just to let you know that the employer now, the employee, should they just come into the new scheme, and especially if they're on the 40% tax relief, you know, if you don't let them join the scheme straight away, they're going into the auto-enrolment, and the auto-enrolment may not be the right thing for them, as I said, especially if they're on the higher tax rate. So it's just a change, I suppose, for employers to know that, you know, when they're offering someone a contract, should they be putting them onto the pension plan that's in place straight away? It's better for the employee if they're on the higher rate, to be straight.
Yeah. Okay. And you might notice I didn't quite pick it up. So let's say someone is employed in one employer, and let's say a 10K salary and 15K in a second employment. So overall they're 25K. Do they get auto-enrolled, or how would that work?
I'll take this again. It'll go again on the payroll summary, but NERSA will look at through the the PPSN number, and they will look at the whole lot. And my understanding is that it will go in under one of the employments.
And which employer pays the contribution, or do they both?
Well, it shouldn't really happen, I suppose, unless they're under the 20,000. But if they're over 20, it's both employers if they are, but it's hardly going to be somebody with 2 employments up to 20, but it could be for 20 and maybe 10.
Okay. Okay. And I suppose one of the things that jumped out at me there is if someone dies and they're in the scheme, the money goes to their next of kin, but after paying tax, which is different than a private pension, is it?
Completely different. So if you have your pension, God forbid you die, it'll go to your estate, you know, tax free. And again, if you're in a scheme, you know, in a workplace, it'll be 4 times salary. And with this, it'll be taxed. So, you know, there's pros and cons, I suppose, for people at the moment. And unfortunately, you know, when you take, if something happens, if you take your pension, and you die and it goes to your next of kin and it's taxed. And if it's a large lump sum, Dave, there's a big difference there, you know, to your next of kin, especially if somebody hasn't anything else, you know, any other benefit. And the other thing, I suppose, is the auto-enrolment is linked to the retirement age. So you won't be taking your pension from the auto-enrolment until you reach retirement. The difference is if you're paying into a PRSA or if you're in a scheme in work, you know, if you left earlier, 55, 60, you left employment, you'll be able to get your hands on your 25% tax-free lump sum and then start drawing down the pension. So it's a lot more tied. There's a lot more rules to it, and unfortunately, there's a bit of uncertainty about, you know, if you take a tax-free lump sum, what happens? The rest, is it taxed? Doesn't go into an ARF, and there's a lot of uncertainty around that at the moment.
Okay, so it sounds to me that, you know, if your employees are at the higher rate of tax, then a private pension scheme is probably preferable. But let's say all your employees are at the 20% rate, and you know you don't want to go down the private pension piece, so auto enrollment is what you're looking at, and let's say that company hasn't done anything to date with it. What were the first steps for them? What do they need to do? What's the first step that they need to do?
For auto enrollment or to put in a new scheme?
No, auto enrollment.
I let Sally take that because it's going to happen automatically, but.
Okay, so Sally, I suppose the question is, do they need to do anything? And you just might go on mute there because there's an echo. But Sally, do they need to do anything as of now?
As of now, the employer hasn't the ability to do anything other than educate themselves and decide what is best. They do need to talk to their employees and make them aware that this, now there are ads on the TV and things, but make them aware this is coming to effect. Maybe look at your contract of employment for your employees as well, because this is a new change and probably contracts should be brought up to date for it. So your rates of pay, we're going to have the minimum wage increase as well. Employers need to look at their cash funds, I suppose, because this is a percentage. So the 1.5% of the employee's deduction is of their gross pay. Now their gross pay is any sort of pay. So it's 1.5% of that. That's, I actually noticed they're even including, if you have to, which you do, include tips now through payroll. The auto enrolment is going to be 1.5% of that. The employer has to match it. So they're going to have funds to pay this out. That's the next thing to look at. So there is a portal to come up online. So employers do need to register with the portal, but it's not available as yet. So your payroll summaries, I suppose what you need to do as an employer is make a decision one way or the other, which way you're going. If you are going to be sticking with auto enrolment, then your payroll summaries from now until the end of the year will be taken into consideration. So you run your first payroll in January. It's going to see who's eligible once the the payroll summary is submitted to Revenue. Revenue is going to pass it on to NERSA. NERSA is going to decide who's eligible. They're going to send the AEPN, so a payroll provider administrator is going to have to apply that like they do the RPNs at the minute. That's going to tell who's eligible, and away you go. So the thing is, once the portal is set up, yes, we're going to have to register. All employers are going to have to register if they're going to fall in under the scheme. They're going to have to set up a direct debit so that the monies collected from the employees will be paid out each month. It's going to impact on the practicality of how you run your payroll from January on. You can't make corrections because NERSA will only accept what you've submitted on your PSR to the payment date up to HAPA-6. So if somebody comes back and you've put the wrong hours in, you can make the adjustment for your revenue side, but for your pension side you can't, because the deduction has been made. So you're going to have the practicality of how that's going to happen in the future. But I suppose the big takeaway for employers today is make a decision on what way you're going to go. You're going to, once the portal comes, you're going to have to register. You're going to have to put in your bank details to be able to pay the money over to NERSA once you make the deductions through your payroll. Look at your employees' contracts, talk to your employees. A lot of people who are lower paid aren't going to realize the impact it's going to have on their net pay, because this is a net deduction. So if I'm only coming out with 200 euros a week and suddenly there's money gone out of it, I'm going to be going straight back to know why. In my experience, people don't understand pay slips. They don't know the workings. Our tax system has gone so complicated, they don't know how to work it out. So first thing they're going to be doing is running back to know why have you made this deduction. So I can see that causing a lot of queries.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Eddie. And I think the main thing so is for employers and employees to become educated for now, and then and I assume, Sally and Anders, this is definitely coming in on 1 January 26th. There's no more delays. That'd be fair to say.
Yeah, I think we have no choice now.
Okay.
And Dave, just another area, just to quickly highlight there that we mightn't have mentioned. We've had a lot of queries from employers where people have their employees are paying their own personal pension out of their personal account, and they feel because they have a personal pension, I have a pension, I won't be auto-enrolled. But they will, because it's not being deducted from their payroll. That's very important to realise. So a lot of people are saying, sure, I have a pension, I'm paying 200 a month a pension, but it's not going through their payroll, Dave. So they will end up paying their personal pension and they're going to be auto-enrolled. So,
and how do you fix that? You get the payments through payroll, is it?
If it's a PRSA, you may be able to set it up to go through payroll. So it would have to be a new direct debit. It would have to go out of your employer's account and you'd have to be deducted from payroll. If it's a personal pension, you'd have to make that paid up, and it would have to be a PRSA, or you'll be automatically enrolled. So there's a little bit going on with that at the minute. I think people feel, sure, I have a pension, I won't be auto-enrolled. So just to be very aware of that as well.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Okay. I think that's it from a question point of view. So Anne O'Doherty from Xeinadin Financial Services, thanks a million for that. And Sally Turner from Xeinadin, thanks for giving your time today. And hopefully some of our members will make use of some of the suggestions that you've put through. So thanks again, and goodbye for now.